A lot of them end up in gardens, do they?
They tend to go to private gardens. I have quite a few pieces in public, but most of the work I do is for private collections.
We were talking about how that first time you sent off a selection of your sculptures, some heads and so on, and couldn't believe that they all sold. You didn't even feel you should hand out this card that said Brian Alabaster, sculptor. And I think you went off and had lessons and all sorts, didn't you, before you actually dared to feel that you really were a sculptor?
I did. Well, I went to Canterbury. I went to evening classes at Canterbury Art College, which with a chap called Simon Foster-Ogg. But he wasn't really a figurative artist, and so he didn't. But he did take me up to London and show me around some contemporary galleries, and I learnt a lot about contemporary art from him, but not a lot about...
But you went into the contemporary art yourself?
No, but I do quite a bit of abstract work and more abstract work. It is very difficult to do, but that's not really how I make my living. I make my living doing tight figurative portraits, whole figure portraits of people's families.
I was just having a look through one of the catalogues you've got there, and they're beautiful. These sitting and reading. I just love it. It's the movement, I think. And when you were young, didn't you see someone? Haven't you got memories of when you were 10 or 11 going and seeing?
Yeah, no. Funny enough, I'm just doing a similar piece at the moment. When I was about 11 or 12, I think I went to the summer exhibition, and there was a sculpture on show there by an academician called Hartley of a girl on a swing, a bronze of this girl on a swing, and I thought it was gorgeous, and I thought, well, I'd really like to do something like that, but I think I must have gone home and played with plasticine, but nothing more. And funny enough, that the piece of the dancer, which was sold at Chelsea for the dancers' fees, went to the biggest collector of Hartleys in the UK, and he's got a huge collection, including this girl on a swing.
Fantastic.
Which I was able to have a look at a couple of weeks ago.
So maybe subliminal, which is a word I can never say, but maybe that really did influence your...
I think it must have done, because there are several things about my style and his that I definitely subliminally, there you go,
you can say it better than I can.
That I'd picked up some of his techniques. It's maybe the way he handled his clothes, and I like his work a lot.
And so have you studied like anatomy? Have you had to go and look at muscles and know where they, or is it just something that's come to you intuitively?
I did. Well, I did in a way. I did get involved when I was a student. I worked in a morgue and used to do
study and a half.
I used to do cut up a few people, and I think that's where my interest started. Seeing what was on the inside as opposed to just on the outside.
That must really help, mustn't it? Because it's all right once the clothes are on, but the body, you've got to get all the muscles in the right place, especially if they're moving. You've got to know what the body's doing, haven't you?
It's very difficult. With extreme movement, it's very difficult to predict what the body's going to do, even from a good knowledge of anatomy. So these days, the advent of high-speed digital cameras, it helps enormously that you can actually take pictures of the leg or the arm doing a particular active pose and get some idea of which muscles are firing off, and often it's quite counterintuitive. If
someone comes to you and says, "Can you do a statue of my daughter or son?" Take me through the process. Do they have to come and sit? How does it all work?
Well, it starts with meeting them, meeting the children, meeting the family, finding what it is they want to achieve. I mean, the sculptures I'm working on at the moment, case in point, they're family down in Tunbridge Wells, and we had a number of meetings where we talked about what the children might want to do, how they wanted them represented, where they wanted them to go, and they didn't want passive pieces. I've done a lot of sitting, reading. They wanted active pieces, and they suggested that they wanted a girl on a swing, and I was been very nervous of doing this. I've always avoided that subject because I didn't want it like a pastiche of this other piece. But I looked around and I couldn't see any images of pieces that I liked. So I thought, well, I could have my own stab at that. So we got a swing, got the girl, and spent a couple of days with her and lots of photographs, different skirts, different swing sizes, getting some shots of something that I could then try and capture. So it's just
lots of photographs, yeah?
Lots of, over 1,000, you can't sketch, your eyes, just like trying to capture a running horse, that galloping horse picture. So the detail is impossible to capture of all the muscles. without using photographs. So for those really action poses, and I think the other two, I had one of her sisters was skipping. They wanted to have her skipping, well, that's what she wanted, and the last one was the older brother who wanted to be throwing a ball. So we got him just as a ball was released from his hand. So again, lots of photographs and.
The skipping one will be intriguing because you've got to work out. They've got to stand up, haven't they? You've got to make them.
Well, she'll be balancing right on one tiptoe. So the bronze
so
is
how
very.
Do you do that?
Bronze is very strong, and it's quite strong enough to stand for a private piece. You wouldn't be able to do that for a public sculpture because it would be too suspect to a Friday night drunk climbing on it would probably break it off somewhere. But for a garden piece, it's fine.
You could use the skipping rope.
The skipping rope, yeah, but it would have to be so thick to be. The skipping rope will, in fact, touch the ground slightly because that's the pose we've chosen. But even that, it wouldn't offer a lot of support.
So do you do that? You go through all these options as to how high in the swing you are, whether your legs are tucked back forward.
Swing is a real tricky one because obviously you've got to touch the ground somewhere, and the Hartley piece had a long dress. It was an older woman in a long dress, and the front of the long dress was touching the ground, so her legs were extended. The one I'm doing, the girl wouldn't naturally be wearing a long dress, so it was more difficult.
One toe on the ground?
No. She's in full swing. You'll see it at Chelsea next year. You can come and tell me whether I made a success of it.
It is. So how long do they take? You've got these photos, then you take them away. I mean, how long is the
we
creation?
go over the photographs with thousands of photographs and go over them with the family, and then come up with a short list
with the one you want.
And then I start drawing, and I draw and measure. And then I start from the inside out. I start building a metal skeleton, effectively, from the child.
These books are fascinating because you've got a frame, a frame of a body, I suppose.
Because clay itself is quite strong in compression when it's dry and as it dries up, but it's very poor in tensile strength, so it tears apart. So in order to support this sort of structure, you need a very strong. We call it an armature, which is an internal structure, and I find it useful to follow the bones of the body in my armature construction. So I actually, because often I'm doing a running piece, so I'll start from the hips.
So you're doing a
I'll work up through the spine. Well, I mean, really, I'm working from. There are certain points in the skeletal system which are easy to measure to, and their distances from one another are regulated by bones. The shoulder's a very tricky thing because it's only really connected to the body skeletally by the what's this bone
clavicle.
Called? The clavicle. They see O-level biology coming out.
Yes, it was.
So that point, but everything else about the shoulder is fluid. So when you're taking measurements from a moving child, from a child that really a 5-year-old that can't sit still, it's quite difficult to know where the shoulder's going to be. So it's easier, from my point of view, to start with the skeleton and then work out through the musculature and then I end up doing I do that from life, always from life, and then I do the final muscle details on an action piece using the photographs I've taken.
Okay, so do they come to your studio then at that stage?
No, I do everything in their own. I set up a studio in their homes, and I work.
So you live with them?
I go and stay. I go and move in.
Do you warn that when people say you will see a lot of me?
I do. They seem to be. They're always very polite about it. I try not to drink too much of their wine, and I go to bed early. Other than that, it works fine.
Fantastic. And then how long is it once? Because you splodge on the clay, and as you say, you do it, and then you put the clothes on. And it's amazing the way
splodge on. I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know. You're being very derisory about this. Well, 1 minute you're talking about the wonderful art and all this, and the next minute it's splodging on clay.
I'm just looking at a book which no one else can. You can't tell me that that's smoothed out yet.
No, but I just don't.
And then you smooth it. Don't you?
Well, no. Yes, you build up. It's. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Splodging's fine. Yeah, no. It's.
And then after that, you do the fine detail.
Well, it's more, it's just a focusing. I think if you think about it as focusing, so I build the sculpture. So I start from the feet, finish at the top of the head, and I do that. Once I've finished it, I then go back and start and do the whole thing again. And each time you do it, the relative positions of all these different surfaces, or all these different muscles, relative to one another, is adjusted slightly. Because if you try, you can't just complete a leg, because it has to work in relation to the rest of the body. So you do the whole thing as it were, from 100 yards away, and then gradually you get closer and closer and closer, and the detail only really comes right at the very
toenails,
end.
fingernails, all those
Well,
things.
yes, I don't want toenails and fingernails. I mean, I do put them in because the clients demand it, but I think that some of those little itty bitty details can detract from
Not that important.
Well, I think the piece should work without that. It should just work. You should be able to recognise one of my children from the back. You should know which know the child from their particular, the way they hold their body, their little idiosyncrasies of the way that their bodies work, because we're all different.
And do you always know when it's done? You step back and say, that's it,
No, there's always a temptation to keep going, and often that's a mistake. So when it's still reasonably fresh, not too finished, that's when it's probably at its best. And it's trying to persuade a client to agree to that is usually the tricky bit.
I think they're absolutely beautiful. Have you done any of your own family yet?
I've done a lot of my own family.
Probably when you were starting out.
I did. They don't behave. They don't reminisce. My children don't reminisce about it in quite the fond way that I do.
Children never do
I think they threatened me with childline on more than one occasion, making them stand there in the cold whilst I sculpted them.
So what are your ambitions? Obviously, you're getting busier and busier, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I've been fully booked on the commission front for some years now, and I think I want to explore the abstract work I do a bit more. I've got a bit more time. I'm not doing the casting now, and I think I'll probably my ambition would be to have a reasonable exhibition of exclusively abstract work.
So what sort of try and explain to me, because abstract could be anything.
Well, abstract is just some things which are taken away. I mean, what I do is very tight. Reality, really, but what you're trying to do, to a certain extent, you're trying to represent a body with lump of clay. So that in itself or then bronze, is abstraction. But taking it a step further and trying to still get that feeling, and maybe more of a feeling of movement and muscle and power and emotion, without putting quite so much detail in.
I should be interested.
So my work is a lot of it is still figurative, although I do some completely abstract work. A lot of it still have a figurative element to it, but it's taken a little bit further back, and it's much more difficult.
That's what the challenge is for you, isn't it? I guess it's not necessarily what people want; it's what you want to do, is it?
And now I really can. I can also concentrate on what I want to do, having really got enough of the work, from the sort of making a living point of view. I can also spend some time on things, not really worrying about them selling.
Yeah. So people can look at a website, can't they? Do you go to exhibitions? The only exhibition I go to is the one
Chelsea. You saw me at, which is the Chelsea Flower Show, and I go each year to that. And it's a nice outing, but I don't do any other shows. I have occasionally been persuaded to take pieces along to the Fressingfield Garden, Open Gardens, but I haven't done that for a couple of years. It's such a lot of... I'm getting old and I can't lug these blooming sculptures around. And, it's a lot of work to do it. But I must be more proactive, but I'm not.
Oh, just do it.
My website's hopelessly out of date.
You enjoy it, but people can see a bit of an example of the work, can't
There's
they?
a lot of work on the website. It's not entirely up to date, but there is a lot of work on the website.
And if people are interested in these, are these for people in particular, or is it
those books?
Catalogues.
There's a link to the books. They can be bought from the company that prints them, which is Blurb, and there's a link on the website. I don't make anything. That's just they charge what they charge, and people can buy those books on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian Alabaster, 2011. They're just beautiful examples of some of the work that you do. It's just fantastic. It's fascinating. I could talk to you all day, but we've run out of time. We'll kick you off the sofa. Thank you ever so much for coming in.
Can I just say there really is a sofa here? I didn't think there would be, and I was quite prepared to dob you in if there hadn't been a sofa, but there is. I am sitting on it. I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable sofa in the world.
No, well, I have hinted, but the BBC's not that rich. You could sculpt my sofa, of course.
I could, yes. It might be a bit hard in bronze.
And the website...
I thought you were going to say sculpt you on the sofa, but...
I wouldn't suggest it. It would cost me far more than the BBC salary would allow. Alabaster, Alabaster. If people just look that, they'll find you, won't they, on the website?
They will, yes. Google me, and I'm afraid I do appear.
Which is very good. It's a great name for a good job. Thank you so much for coming in. It's absolutely fascinating.
Well, thank you for inviting me.